Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll see a video profile of the new music director of the Fargo Moorhead Symphony Orchestra, Christopher Zimmerman. But first, well, we have the man himself sitting here in the studio with me. And Christopher, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Well, as we get started, tell the folks a little bit about yourself, where you're originally from.
Okay, well, I was born and brought up in England, just south of London, but I actually have dual citizenship because my mother's from this country, from Connecticut. And I've spent, most of my life on one side of the pond or the other, but I've actually been living now in the States for 20 years. Can't believe it's that long. I also went to college over here, but I was in England from when I was born till I actually went to college at 18. Then I went back after college here to Europe and England again for about 6 or 7 years, but then came here to settle 20 years ago.
Well, let's talk about, I guess, how did you end up getting the job as conductor of the FM Symphony Orchestra?
Well, I applied for the job. Like most of these orchestras, there are notices that go out when they're looking for a new music director of the orchestra. And it's actually a series of steps you kind of go through. If you're lucky, you get through to the end. The end being actually being invited as one of the candidates to conduct. And there were 5 candidates, each one conducting one of the concerts in the season, because the Fargo Moorhead Symphony has 5 concerts in its season. I was here actually at the week of the presidential election last November. I was the second candidate of the 5. And I had a very enjoyable week, and of course I had to wait around a bit to find out what the result was going to be. But I was the choice, and I was very happy to accept the position.
Well, congratulations and welcome to the area. How's it been going so far? Obviously, you were here, it's been a while, quite a few months ago, but now you're back and been involved. So what's your impression so far of the musicians here in this region?
Well, so I actually got in on Sunday night because we have a concert coming this week. I'll be coming about 5, 6, 7 times, well, for each concert, so 5 times, and also a couple of other times beyond that for other duties. So I came in on Sunday, and in fact we had a first rehearsal for this performance on Sunday night. And I have to say I was really, really, really pleased with that. I felt that, well, it's been a great welcoming actually. The orchestra's been incredibly supportive in general about my appointment, I think, which I'm really obviously happy about. But they actually demonstrated that a bit at the first rehearsal, because there was a sense of sort of edge of your seat, wanting to get on with the work, and a real preparation before that rehearsal as regards the technical aspects of the music. So I thought it went really well. Yeah, I'm pleased. We got had a rehearsal last night. We've got 3 more. And then the show's on Saturday. Well,
let's talk about that. Obviously, the first performance is coming up. I understand it'll be at the NDSU Festival Concert Hall on Saturday night at 7:30 with a Sunday matinee at 2.
Right. 2 performances.
Now, what will you be playing there at that concert?
So there is actually a kind of, because of the English-American background that I have, I thought, and this has been supported by the orchestra, that it might be nice to kind of show composers from America and England kind of intertwined a bit. And in this first program, we're actually performing a couple of pieces by English composers. Famous, great English composer Benjamin Britten, who was actually born 100 years ago this year, so there's kind of a centenary commemoration sense to it. And another well-known English composer, Vaughan Williams, with a very pretty, beautiful small piece called The Lark Ascending, which has solo violin, which kind of sounds like this bird, and orchestra beneath that. And then, and this is really remarkable to me, and I've not experienced this before, the principal bassoonist of the orchestra, who is actually quite a well-known musician in this area. I call him a rock star because I think he really is well-known. His name is Russ Peterson. He's a multifaceted musician, not only first bassoon in the orchestra, apparently a phenomenal saxophone player. I haven't heard him play yet. Also a composer. And he asked me if he could write a piece in honor of the orchestra and my new tenure here, which is really, really a nice gesture, isn't it? So he's written this piece called The Red River Overture. So you can imagine what that's about. But also in the little sort of dedication at the front of the score. It says, welcoming our new music director, Christopher Zimmerman, and the orchestra. It's supposed to kind of be a bridge between English music and American music. So there is a sense of the Thames River from London in this piece, as well as the Red River Overture. And I think the Thames bit is a brand new piece, right? Mm-hmm. I think the Thames part is perhaps the sort of polite music at the beginning, and then it kind of gets really turbulent later, which I'm sure is your river here. So there's that nice gesture from Russ. And then the last piece of the concert, kind of the biggest piece, the symphony, is not by an English person or an American. It's by actually a Finn, a famous composer called Sibelius, happens to be one of my favorite composers. And the reason for choosing that is because it is one of these pieces which is it kind of goes on a symphonic journey, a kind of narrative through turmoil and tension to triumph at the end. And I thought as an opening concert that would be a nice journey to take. And in fact, that picture kind of goes across the whole program, because the first piece I mentioned before the Vaughan Williams, the Britain piece at the beginning, is a very dark work. It's called Sinfonia da Requiem, and the Requiem part is very prevalent in this piece. And it kind of takes you into the depths of human despair in times, and then it kind of becomes more ethereal at the end. But that journey is taken over by the Sibelius in the second half. So we really have over the whole concert a sense of going from kind of dark beginnings right up into the light. I thought that would be a great journey to take as a kickoff.
That sounds very good. You know, you mentioned, we talked coming on, before we came on here live, that you're the music director. Of course, you know, we often call you the conductor, but you said conducting is just one of the aspects of what you do. So what does a music director do for an orchestra?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, conductor means technically the business of standing in front of the orchestra, preparing the orchestra and conducting the concert, the sort of physicality of that, and the rehearsals and all that. Music director means I'm sort of the joint head of the orchestra. There's the executive administrative side, Linda Boyd, who you know, and then there's kind of artistic side, which is my responsibility. So it goes into planning what the concerts are, it goes into promoting the music in the region from a kind of musical perspective. I'm in charge of, you know, outreach programs, what type of programs we might do in the schools, going into the schools myself to try and spread the word. The business of when there are vacancies in the orchestra, auditioning players for that sort of stuff outside just the conductor part is when I come in and conduct the concerts, but there's the other overseeing to that.
Can you talk about some of the various positions you've held? Understand you've guest conducted for the London Symphony, and just tell us about some of those.
Well, I've been lucky, I suppose is the word, or fortunate in the sense that I've actually had experiences with many different orchestras all over the world as a guest conductor, distinct from being the music director. So the guest conductor business is you go in and you do the concert, right? So yes, I've actually worked with some major orchestras, which is great, some in England, in this country, in actually Mexico, in South America. I was in China quite recently, where, as you probably know, classical music is really taking a foothold. And I haven't actually been to Australia or New Zealand yet, which I'd like to do at some point. But also I've also been music director of other orchestras. Quite a long time ago, when I was still actually in England, I was music director of the City of London Chamber Orchestra. As the name implies, it's kind of a smaller group, still an orchestra, but not a big orchestra. Then since I came to live here, the Bangor Symphony Orchestra in Maine and the Symphony of Southeast Texas just outside Houston. And right now I'm also music director of the Fairfax Symphony, which is an orchestra just outside Washington, D.C., just on the heels of Washington, D.C. And that's actually where I live with my family, just outside D.C. So at the moment I'm music director of that orchestra and this orchestra.
Okay. Well, your China trip, you said you got a chance, I think, to go there a couple of times. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was great. Actually, I've not been yet to the major cities. I haven't been to Beijing or Shanghai. The first time I went to a city called Shenyang, which is just northeast of Beijing, near the Russian border. And also went down to the south part, a place called Xiamen. So I actually sort of traveled across the eastern side of the country, which was great. Second time I went to Hong Kong and Guangzhou, which is just over the border from Hong Kong. So
Okay.
it was great.
Well, let's go back to some of your music training. I mean, does one start out wanting to be a music director and a conductor, or did you just have a love for music and then develop into it?
The second is absolutely right. So as a kid, I took piano. I started piano at the age of about 7 or 8. Then I took up the violin. I really wanted to play the violin for these days, the very old age of 11 or, no, I was 12, I think. But these days, you know, my son, for instance, started at 6. He's quite a good violinist, but, you know, he had a head start on me. So I played those instruments, but I come from not a professional music family, but a family who's always loved classical music. So it was kind of not something which was difficult for me to assimilate. And I fell in love. I remember very much falling in love. My first piece was, I think, Tchaikovsky. A piece by Tchaikovsky, violin concerto, it might have been. And I just really got into the sound world of classical music. And when I went to college, I pursued piano and violin, but not only. So I got a bachelor's actually in music, so it wasn't specific to one instrument. And during that time, I took a class in conducting on not the practical side, but just sort of what does a conductor do, which I'm sure you're going to ask later. And I got kind of fascinated by it, but I never wanted to conduct. I didn't want to stand up in front of people and look like an idiot. I really didn't. But I was kind of interested in playing in the orchestra at that time at college. I sort of wanted to hear about what this might be, and actually I got bitten by the bug. I did. It made me think, God, I really want to learn the music, the whole piece, as it were. And I then decided I was going to pursue the training necessary for that.
Okay. Well, that said, I'll ask you. A lot of people watch and they see a conductor standing in front, and you're waving a baton or a stick or something.
Yeah.
But so, what is the real role of a conductor in bringing all that music together?
Okay, so it's a good question. It kind of varies a lot, and it can vary a little bit depending on maybe the level of the orchestra, whether it's professional or not. But fundamentally, I like to make the comparison with the director of a play. You are the person who's in charge of sort of putting the thing together, assimilating all the components, which are played in this case by someone else, and having an overriding vision as to what that might be. So that's the big picture, right? And then in rehearsals, you take the time to try and get there. So going from the minutiae to the big picture. So, you know, when you have your first rehearsal, you might read through the piece, and things go wrong, and you try to fix them. Like maybe some of the instruments are a little bit out of tune, so you stop and you try to tune that up. Or obviously, as you can imagine, with some of this music, it's complicated that not everyone's playing together, so you try to help the orchestra play together. And it's not just watching the conductor, by the way. That's part of it, because you send out signals like beating time, right? That's one thing. It's more, though, I think, to try and create a culture of listening to each other, and you're kind of like a coach in a way. You're kind of the boss. You try to get the orchestra cohesive, trying to help them to know what to listen for with their colleagues, and of course follow signals, and frankly try and inspire them into what is behind the notes as well. You know, the notes are one thing. You play the right notes in the right time. It still can be boring, right? You want to try and get behind those notes and try to help the musicians understand what the essence of this music is, or what we think it is. I think it is. Does that help?
It does. It does, very much so. So what do you like about conducting regional orchestras like Fargo Moorhead?
Well, I mean, I think it doesn't vary a huge amount, I guess, whether you conduct a regional orchestra or you guest conduct a bigger orchestra or whatever you may call it. Other than, you know, if you're in my case, the music director, so I'll be coming on an ongoing basis, then there's a real relationship you're building. So that in itself is really nice, to try and build that relationship, which I would call very collaborative. I mean, answering the question you just asked me, you know, I'm the boss in the sense that I'm the director of what's going to happen, but I want this to be a two-way process. I want us to kind of explore this music with me leading, but to get into it together. So if I can get support from the orchestra in that vision, then that is really rewarding, and in a sense with a regional orchestra that may be easier than just flying in with a professional orchestra has different conductors each week, and they just sort of, oh, there's another conductor, heads down, let's just play. You know?
Okay. You know, where is the current state of classical music, do you think, in the world right now? I mean, are new pieces really being written quite a bit, or are people just relying on sort of the old favorites, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, this is not an easy question to answer, at least succinctly or quickly, I should say. The state of classical music is in some ways a little bit grim. I mean, our audiences don't seem to be growing in some ways. But there are those who wring their hands about this because, frankly, in some ways also, it's never been better. I mean, think how many orchestras there are over this country. There are lots and lots of professional orchestras at a pretty high level, you know, giving this music, this art form, this entertainment to its community. And we'd all like to see more people in our concerts, and there is that difficulty sometimes because so many people don't really know about classical music. They might find it intimidating. We're trying to make them realize it should not be intimidating. But so there's that balance. But I would say on the whole that it is not an unhealthy situation at all. As I say, there are lots of orchestras doing concerts like we're doing here in Fargo Moorhead. These concerts are not just Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart, the old, as you know. I mean, it does constitute that, of course, because these are great, great works of art. But also, as you asked, pieces written today. And in fact, I find it very exciting, number one, to do these pieces. There are tons of good music out there. Number two, I think it's important because we wouldn't have Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart if orchestras had not premiered these pieces. And in fact, we're doing, I mean, Russ Peterson's piece aside, which is doing this program, we're doing a piece which has never been performed in Fargo later in the season. And I think we will be doing more of that. I mean, music, symphonic music, which is being written today.
So what is your approach in conducting and in dealing and interacting with the members of the orchestra?
Well, as I think I was saying earlier, it seems to me it should be a collaborative process. That may seem obvious, but in the olden days, meaning 50 plus years ago, the conductor's position was more kind of dictatorial, frankly, almost tyrannical. Some famous conductors of the past who could, you know, hire and fire at whim. Now, thankfully, and obviously that's not the case. So, you know, to get the players to give of their best, it seems to me, you've got to be maybe tough at times, but it seems to me you need to inspire them and have them collaborate with you. I mean, you want them to play, right, for you, or play the music with you and for you. So my approach is to try and make it as collaborative as possible and try and elicit that two-way.
Okay. What are some of your favorite pieces to conduct?
You know, actually, my favorite pieces to conduct are not necessarily my favorite pieces of all time to hear, but sometimes they are. I would say, you know, any conductor would probably say this, to conduct a piece, symphonies of the scope of Mahler, you know, this composer, and Strauss, because this music is so gorgeously written for very large orchestras. So there's a huge sound world there to kind of get your hands dirty with, you know. But also I like, there are many composers I like. This man Sibelius we're doing in the first concert, I think we'll do more of if I get my way, is a composer who I think is endlessly fascinating, beautiful music. Obviously, you know, Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, the Grand Masters, I love that too. There's a whole spectrum.
Christopher, we're running out of time. The season consists of five concerts. Five concerts.
Well, yeah, done twice. I mean, performed twice.
Performed twice, as you say. So we look forward to the new season with you as the conductor. But so where do you go next after opening performance with Fargo Moorhead? Do you go to another conducting gig?
Actually, I think I go back to Fairfax, my other orchestra, where I have a concert in about a week's time.
Okay.
So,
well, we are running out of time. So if people want more information, where's the best place for them to go?
I think the website would be good, or call up the offices of the Fargo Moorhead Symphony. Either is great.
Well, Christopher, when you were here a few months ago, we actually did a video piece and did a little profile. So we're going to take a look at that right now.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned for a video profile of Christopher Zimmerman.
Perfect intonation. Great. this word classical music, you know, it has a certain intimidation maybe attached to it. And indeed, a lot of the music we play is, I mean, the art form is sophisticated, it's quite complicated. It doesn't mean that what it is can't really reach people. I mean, it is beautiful stuff. I grew up in England, just in London, basically, just south of London. I was interested in music at a pretty early age, although, you know, like most kids, I was into pop music, but I grew up hearing classical music all the time. You have the pulse, bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba, bum. They have to be able to listen to that, so that has to be completely clean. And then they'll be together. And similarly, bum, 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 bim, bum, bum will come from that. I think it was when I was 11, my dad bought me a record of Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto. He said, well, just try it. And I actually completely fell in love with it. I mean, that's how I got into classical music. I really fell in love with this. And I was playing piano at the time and I started violin. So I knew that I wanted to be in music somehow. And when I came to college as an undergrad, I pursued violin and piano and also music as a whole, history, theory and all that. And then I got bitten by the bug at some point of wanting to conduct. The most important part of conducting, it may sound silly or it may sound trite, but it's true, I think, is the ability to actually listen. You're constantly giving out signals, but what you need to do is listen to the response. Although I have a very strong opinion or idea, let's say, or interpretation about how Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony goes, I don't impose that willy-nilly on every orchestra that I conduct. It's like cooking something, right? You know, you put something together based on the ingredients you have. So I listen to what they do and I kind of adapt my thoughts to what they do because I want to get the best response as a whole. So there is a collaborative element to that. Yeah, good. So are you doing pam pim or your same bow? Okay. The group seems to have a unified sense within itself, which is very nice to work with. People obviously played a lot together. Crescendos, crescendos, yes. And there's also, I think, a sense of camaraderie within the group, which is also important. I do feel that they're responding quite enthusiastically, so I'm hoping, you know, that it'll keep building and that the concerts will be good. I was asked by Linda Boyd, the executive director, to, I think, give 2 different programs, which would be a program of music that I feel very passionate about and obviously feel that I can clearly interpret and communicate with. But the other part, which is important, is that the program itself has some sort of internal balance, which in fact I believe this one does. And that there is and this is very important to me, there is a real diversity within the program. It's really hard if someone's not into classical music to say, come to this concert and it's, you know, Brahms' Second Symphony, and that they go away completely transformed. I mean, I think that's difficult. But I think if you give them a program of Shostakovich Symphony and John Adams or something, that there's a real chance that at least part of that music will really strike a chord. I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to do to just introduce a kid, let's say, or an adult who doesn't know anything about this sort of music. Say, listen to this Mozart piece and try and make them love that and then move forward. I think it's easier the other way around. I think it's easier or makes more sense to introduce them to symphonic music, orchestral music, which is being written right now, which I think they're going to be more likely to be, they're more likely to relate to because it's about today and it's music written today. And if you can get them involved in that, then go back to the old masters. There's a wealth of this music which is really diverse and really great. The orchestra which I'm with at the moment is not actually a completely full-time position. And what is attractive about it is that there's a real potential there for someone coming in to actually improve, not just the quality of the music necessarily, that's probably the most important part of the job and in a way one of the most fun parts, but just to get the orchestra, you know, more known in the community and you know, out there as a really good product which people are really excited about. it looked like this position was very similar. So I would like to try my hand here as well.
The Fargo Moorhead Symphony is searching for its next music director. This season, our Masterworks concerts will each be led by one of the 5 finalists. The decision of who will be the next artistic leader will involve valuable input from the orchestra musicians, audience members, symphony supporters, students, and members of the community, including you. The countdown begins. Who will be the Fargo Moorhead Symphony's next conductor?
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse for this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funded in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.